Hey guys. Tonight, we're climbing high above a sleeping city, where the bells have marked time for centuries and the stone walls hold the weight of prayer and solitude. We're going back to the year 1314, to the towers of Prague, where you spend your days and nights as keeper of the bells. If you enjoy this sort of thing, maybe give it a like and subscribe. No pressure though. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I always love hearing from you all. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's drift back in time. You wake before the sun touches the spires of Prague. The darkness is complete, wrapping around you like the wool blanket you pull closer to your chin. Your quarters are small, carved from the stone of the tower itself. The walls are thick, so thick that the sounds of the city below barely reach you here. Only the wind finds its way through the narrow slits that serve as windows, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and the faint smell of the river. Your feet touch the cold stone floor. The chill travels up through your legs, awakening you fully. You feel along the rough wall until your fingers find the small wooden shelf where you keep your flint and steel. The familiar weight of these tools in your hands is comforting. You strike them together once, twice, 3 times before the spark catches the char cloth you prepared the night before. The tiny flame grows as you transfer it to the wick of your tallow candle. The light pushes back against the darkness, revealing the simple contents of your chamber. A wooden stool, a small table scarred with knife marks, a clay pot for water, a basket woven from willow branches that holds your few possessions. The candlelight flickers against the stone walls, casting shadows that dance and shift. You dress slowly in the dim light. Your tunic is wool, dyed brown with oak bark, rough against your skin but warm. Your hose are thick, patched in several places where the fabric has worn thin. Your shoes are leather, soft-soled, made for quiet movement across stone floors. You pull your hood up over your head. The fabric still holds the cold of the night air. The candle in your hand provides just enough light to navigate the narrow stone stairs that wind upward through the heart of the tower. Each step is worn smooth by countless feet over countless years. Your own feet have traced this path so many times that you could climb these stairs in complete darkness, feeling your way by the texture of the stone and the rhythm of the ascent. The stairs spiral upward, and with each turn, the air grows colder. You pause at the first landing, where another narrow window slit allows a breath of wind to whisper through. Through this opening, you can see the faint outline of rooftops below, still dark under the starless sky. The city sleeps, but you are awake, tending to the passage of time itself. You continue upward. The stairs grow narrower as you climb. Your candle flame gutters in the draft, and you cup your free hand around it to protect the fragile light. The stone walls press close on either side. Your shoulders almost brush them as you climb. The sound of your footsteps echoes softly in the confined space, a gentle rhythm that matches your heartbeat. At the second landing, you pause again. Here, built into the wall, is a small niche where you keep a clay brazier. The coals from last night have died to ash, but beneath the gray dust, you can feel the faint warmth that lingers. You add small pieces of charcoal from a leather pouch, blowing gently on the embers until they catch and glow. The brazier provides more warmth than light, but both are welcome in the cold tower. You continue your ascent. The final stretch of stairs leads to the bell chamber itself. Here, the ceiling opens up into a vast space where the great bell hangs silent and still. The bronze surface of the bell catches your candlelight and throws it back in warm, amber reflections. This bell, cast years before you came to this tower, bears the marks of its maker and the scratches of time. Around the great bell hang 3 smaller bells, each with its own voice, its own purpose. The prime bell, struck for the first prayer of the day. The terce bell, marking the 3rd hour after sunrise. The sext bell for midday prayer. Each one waits in silence for your hand to set it ringing. You set your candle on a wooden shelf built into the stone wall. Next to it, you place the small pouch of tools you carry with you always. A wooden mallet with a leather-wrapped head. A piece of rough cloth for cleaning. A small pot of rendered fat for oiling the rope mechanisms. A sharp knife for cutting frayed rope ends. These tools are extensions of your hands, worn smooth by constant use. The bell ropes hang down through holes in the wooden floor below. Each rope is thick as your wrist, woven from hemp fibers that have been soaked and dried and twisted until they are strong enough to lift the weight of bronze. You run your hands along each rope, feeling for frayed sections or weak spots. The hemp is rough under your palms, stained dark with age and use. You check the wooden wheel above the great bell. This wheel, carved from oak and bound with iron, allows you to ring the heavy bell with manageable effort. You examine the axle where it passes through the wooden frame, looking for signs of wear. You touch the counterweight that hangs opposite the bell, ensuring it moves freely on its chain. Everything is as it should be. The mechanisms that allow you to ring the bells are simple but precise. Wood and metal and rope, working together in harmony. You oil the axle of the great bell's wheel, working the thick fat into the wood with your fingers. The oil will help the wheel turn smoothly when the time comes to ring the morning prayers. You descend the stairs again, back to the chamber where you keep watch. This room, one level below the bells, has a window that faces east. Through this opening, you can see the first suggestion of dawn beginning to touch the edges of the sky. The darkness is no longer complete. Instead, it has become the deep gray that comes before sunrise. You settle onto the wooden stool beside the window and wait. Waiting is much of what you do in this tower. You wait for the appointed hours when the bells must ring. You wait for the light to change, marking the passage of time. You wait and watch and listen, attuned to the rhythms that govern the prayers and daily life of the city below. The gray light grows slowly stronger. From your window, you can see across the rooftops of Prague to the river that winds through the city like a silver ribbon. Smoke begins to rise from a few chimneys as the earliest risers kindle their fires. The city is waking, but gradually, quietly. You take a piece of bread from your small store of food. The bread is dark, made from rye and barley, dense and filling. You eat it slowly, savoring each bite. Food is simple in the tower. You have what you need, nothing more. Bread and dried peas and sometimes a bit of cheese or salted pork. Water from the well in the courtyard below, carried up the stairs in a wooden bucket. Simple food for a simple life. As you eat, you watch the light continue to grow. The eastern sky begins to show the faintest blush of color, deep purple giving way to gray, gray giving way to the palest yellow. Soon, it will be time for the first bells of the day. You finish your bread and brush the crumbs from your tunic. You take up your candle again, though you need its light less now with the growing dawn. You climb the stairs once more to the bell chamber. Your legs are accustomed to this constant climbing. Up and down, throughout the day and night. The stairs are your path between the world below and the realm of the bells above. In the bell chamber, you can see more clearly now. The bronze bells catch the early light filtering through the arched openings in the tower walls. These openings allow the sound of the bells to carry across the city, but they also let in the cold wind and weather. In winter, Snow sometimes drifts through these openings, gathering in small piles on the wooden floor. You check the position of the sun through the eastern opening. The light has grown strong enough that you can see the silhouettes of the cathedral spires across the city. The great cathedral, still under construction, its walls rising slowly year by year. Smaller churches scattered throughout Prague, each with its own bells, each marking its own prayers and celebrations. It is nearly time for prime, the first prayer of the day. You move to the rope for the prime bell, the smallest of your 4 bells. You wrap your hands around the rough hemp, feeling the familiar texture against your palms. You pull down steadily, and the bell above responds, tilting on its wheel until the bronze strikes the iron clapper. The sound rings out across the sleeping city. Clear and bright, it carries through the morning air, announcing the beginning of another day. You ring the prime bell 7 times, as is the custom. 7 strikes to call the faithful to prayer, to mark the passing of night into day. After the 7th strike, you let the rope settle and the bell return to rest. The sound fades gradually, absorbed by the stone walls and the wooden buildings of the city below. But the echo lingers in your ears, a reminder of the voice you have given to time itself. You descend again to your watching chamber. From here, you can observe the effects of your bell ringing. Thin streams of smoke begin to rise from more chimneys as households wake and kindle their morning fires. A few figures appear in the streets, early risers making their way to the cathedral or to the market square. The city is stirring in response to your call. You settle back onto your stool and resume your vigil. The light continues to grow stronger. Through your window, you can see the details of the city more clearly now. Red tile roofs and timber walls. Stone foundations and wooden shutters. Gardens tucked between buildings, still bare with winter but promising green growth when spring arrives. You pick up a piece of work to occupy your hands while you wait. A section of rope that needs repair, where several strands have begun to fray. You untwist the damaged section carefully, removing the weakened fibers. From a basket beside your stool, you take fresh hemp fibers, combing them straight with your fingers before twisting them into new strands. This rope work is meditative, requiring attention but not intense concentration. Your hands know the motions from years of practice. Twist and splice, twist and splice. The rhythm is soothing, and it helps pass the time between the appointed hours when the bells must ring. As you work, you listen to the sounds of the city awakening. Voices calling to neighbors. The creak of cartwheels on cobblestone. The lowing of cattle being driven to market. Dogs barking. Roosters crowing from whatever small flocks survive within the city walls. These sounds rise up to your tower like prayers themselves, the daily litany of human activity. The sun climbs higher, and its light begins to slant through your window, warming the stone sill where you rest your arms. The warmth is welcome after the cold of the early morning. You pause in your rope work to hold your hands in the sunlight, letting the warmth penetrate your fingers. You can see more activity in the streets now. People moving with purpose toward the cathedral for morning prayers. Merchants setting up their stalls in the market square. Children running errands for their parents, their voices high and clear in the morning air. The city has fully awakened, and the day's work has begun. Time passes slowly in the tower. Minutes stretch into longer segments, measured not by any mechanical device but by the movement of shadows across the stone floor, by the changing angle of sunlight through the window, by the gradual warming of the air as the sun climbs higher in the sky. You finish repairing the rope section and set it aside. Your hands are stained with the oils from the hemp fibers, but this is a familiar condition. Your hands are always marked by your work. rope oil and bronze polish and the dust of stone. Your fingers are calloused from years of gripping bell ropes and handling rough tools. The angle of the light tells you that Terce approaches, the third hour after sunrise. You climb the stairs again to the bell chamber. The ascent is as familiar as breathing, each step placed automatically while your mind focuses on the task ahead. The Terce bell waits for you, hanging silent in its position among the others. This bell has a different voice than the prime bell, deeper and more resonant. You grasp its rope and feel the weight of the bronze above. With a steady pull, you set the bell in motion. The sound fills the bell chamber and spills out through the arched openings into the city beyond. This bell calls the faithful to the third prayer of the day, marking the progression of morning into full daylight. You ring it 9 times, counting each strike carefully. The rhythm must be precise, the intervals between strikes measured and consistent. When the 9th strike fades into silence, you release the rope and let the bell settle into stillness. The echo continues for several heartbeats, bouncing off the stone walls of the tower and the buildings below. Then it too fades, leaving only the ambient sounds of the city and the whisper of wind through the bell chamber. You remain in the bell chamber for a few minutes after ringing Terce, checking once again on the condition of your equipment. You run your hands along the ropes, feeling for any new areas of wear. You examine the wooden wheels and their iron fittings, looking for loose pins or cracked timber. You clean dust from the bells themselves, using a soft cloth to polish the bronze until it gleams in the morning light. These bells are your responsibility, your sacred trust. They have rung over this city for years before your arrival, and they will continue to ring for years after your time here ends. But now, in this moment, they are yours to tend and yours to voice. The weight of this responsibility is both burden and privilege. You oil the mechanism of the Terce bell, working the thick grease into the wooden axle and the iron pivot points. The oil will help preserve the wood and prevent the metal from rusting. This maintenance is constant, a daily ritual that keeps the bells in proper working order. Satisfied with the condition of your equipment, you descend once again to your watching chamber. The sun has climbed higher now, and its light falls more directly through your window. The warmth is pleasant on your face as you settle back onto your stool. You take up another piece of work to occupy the time until the next appointed hour. A wooden tool handle that has worked loose from its metal head. You examine the joint carefully, determining how best to repair it. The handle is ash wood, strong and flexible, but the constant vibration from bell ringing has gradually loosened the metal socket. You take out your knife and carefully shave thin wooden wedges from a scrap of oak. These wedges, when driven into the joint alongside the handle, will expand and tighten the connection. The work requires patience and precision. Too large a wedge will split the socket. Too small, and the joint will remain loose. As you work, you are aware of the passage of time in ways that others in the city are not. The changing quality of light, the shifting patterns of shadow, the gradual warming of the stone around you as the sun climbs toward its zenith. Your life is measured in hours and prayers, marked by the ringing of bells and the ancient rhythms of worship. The handle repair takes considerable time. You work slowly, testing the fit of each wedge before driving it home with gentle taps of your wooden mallet. The sound of mallet on wedge echoes softly in your chamber, a counterpoint to the distant sounds of the city below. When the repair is complete, you test the tool by gripping the handle firmly and checking for any movement in the joint. The connection is solid now, ready for more years of service. You set the tool aside with satisfaction and turn your attention back to watching and waiting. The sun continues its arc across the sky. From your window, you can observe the changing patterns of activity in the city below. The morning rush to prayers and market has settled into the steadier rhythms of work and trade. Smoke rises steadily from workshop chimneys where craftsmen ply their trades. Blacksmiths and carpenters, weavers and bakers, all contributing their skills to the life of the city. You can see people moving along the streets in small groups, engaged in conversation or business. Children play in the spaces between buildings, their games creating small dramas that play out in miniature far below your tower. Women carry baskets and buckets, managing the endless tasks of household maintenance. Men drive carts or carry tools, heading to construction sites or workshops. All of this activity unfolds beneath you like a vast, slow-moving tapestry. You are above it all, separate from it, yet connected to it through the bells that mark the hours of their days. Your ringing calls them to prayer, announces celebrations, warns of danger. The bells are your voice speaking to the entire city. The light continues to change as the morning progresses toward midday. The shadows grow shorter as the sun climbs higher. The stone around you absorbs more heat, making your chamber slightly less cold than it was in the early morning. These small changes mark the passage of time as surely as any mechanical clock. You rise from your stool and move to another window, this one facing south toward the river. From this vantage point, you can see the water flowing past the city, dark and slow between its banks. Boats move along the river, carrying goods and passengers. The water catches the sunlight and throws it back in scattered sparkles. Beyond the river, the land rises into hills covered with forests. The trees are bare now in winter, their branches creating delicate traceries against the sky. Come spring, these same trees will burst into leaf, creating a green canopy that will shelter game and provide timber for the city's construction projects. You return to your eastern window and your stool. The sun has climbed high enough now that its light slants deeply into your chamber, warming the stone floor and walls. You can feel the heat on your back as you sit, a welcome contrast to the perpetual chill of the tower. It is nearly time for sext, the midday prayer. You prepare yourself for another ascent to the bell chamber. Your legs are strong from the constant climbing, but you still feel the effort of each trip up the winding stairs. The steps are steep and numerous, and the weight of years has made the climb more noticeable than it once was. In the bell chamber, you move to the rope of the sext bell. This bell is larger than the prime and terce bells but smaller than the great bell. Its voice carries a middle tone, clear and strong, perfectly suited to calling the faithful to the most important prayer of the day. You wrap your hands around the rope and feel the familiar texture of the hemp fibers. The rope is worn smooth in the places where your hands grip it most often. These worn spots are like signatures, marking the countless times you have rung this bell over the years. You pull down on the rope with steady pressure, feeling the weight of the bronze bell above as it tilts toward the striking position. The moment arrives when bronze meets iron, and the sext bell sends its voice out across the city of Prague. The sound is fuller than the smaller bells, richer and more resonant. It fills the bell chamber completely before spilling out through the arched openings to announce the midday hour to all who can hear. You ring the sext bell 12 times, marking the height of day when the sun stands highest in the sky. Each strike reverberates through the tower, through your body, through the stone and timber of the building itself. The sound waves travel outward in all directions, reaching every corner of the city, calling the faithful to pause in their work and turn their thoughts to prayer. When the 12th strike fades into silence, you hold the rope steady and let the bell settle into rest. The echo takes longer to fade with this larger bell, bouncing off the stone buildings of the city and returning to the tower in diminished whispers. You remain in the bell chamber after ringing sext, taking advantage of the climb to perform more maintenance tasks. You examine the wooden frame that supports all 4 bells, looking for signs of stress or wear. The constant ringing puts tremendous forces on this frame, and any weakness could lead to serious problems. The frame appears sound, its massive oak timbers still strong after years of service. The joints where the timbers meet are secured with iron pins and wooden wedges, all of which appear tight and properly seated. You test each joint by pushing against it with your shoulder, feeling for any unwanted movement. Satisfied with the frame, you turn your attention to the bells themselves. You examine each one for cracks or other damage. Bronze is strong but not invulnerable. Temperature changes, constant striking, and the passage of time can all contribute to metal fatigue. The bells appear to be in good condition. Their bronze surfaces show the patina of age but no cracks or other serious flaws. You clean each bell with a soft cloth, removing dust and bird droppings that have accumulated since your last inspection. This cleaning is more than mere maintenance. It is a form of respect, an acknowledgement of the sacred purpose these bells serve. They are not mere tools but instruments of worship, voices that carry prayers and announcements to the divine and to the community of believers. As you work, you listen to the sounds rising from the city below. The midday hour brings its own rhythms. People emerge from morning prayers and return to their work. The sun stands high overhead, providing the best light of the day for detailed tasks. Workshops and homes buzz with activity. You can hear the sounds of construction from the cathedral site across the city. Hammers striking stone, saws cutting timber, voices calling instructions. The great cathedral has been under construction for decades, rising slowly as funds and materials become available. When complete, it will be one of the finest churches in all of Europe. Your own church, while smaller than the cathedral, is still an important center of worship for this part of the city. The bells you tend call hundreds of people to daily prayers, mark the celebrations of the church year, announce marriages and deaths, warn of fire or other dangers. These bells are woven into the fabric of community life. Having completed your inspection and cleaning, you descend once again to your watching chamber. The sun now shines directly through your window, flooding the small space with light and warmth. You position your stool to take advantage of both the light and the view. You take up your midday meal, simple food that provides the energy you need for your work. Bread, as always, but now accompanied by a small piece of cheese and a handful of dried peas that you soak in water until they soften. The cheese is hard and sharp, made from goat's milk, aged until it keeps well without spoiling. You eat slowly, savoring each bite while watching the activity in the city below. Meals in the tower are solitary affairs, but they provide time for contemplation and observation. You have grown accustomed to eating alone, to the silence broken only by the sounds of your own chewing and the distant murmur of the city. The dried peas are bland but filling. They provide substance that carries you through the long hours between dawn and dusk. You wash them down with water from your wooden cup, cool water drawn from the well in the courtyard below and carried up the stairs in your daily bucket. After eating, you remain at your window, watching and waiting as the afternoon unfolds. The sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, still hours away but already changing the quality of light and shadow in the city below. You take up more rope work, another section that needs attention. This time, it is one of the guy ropes that help stabilize the bell frame during heavy ringing. The rope has stretched with use and needs to be shortened and retied to maintain proper tension. You untie the rope from its anchor point and examine the entire length for wear or damage. Hemp rope is strong, but it degrades gradually under constant stress. Sunlight, moisture, and the oil from human hands all contribute to the slow deterioration of the fibers. This rope appears to be in good condition overall, but you trim away a section where the fibers have begun to fray. You retie the anchor knot, pulling it tight to restore proper tension. The knot must be secure but also accessible for future adjustments. Rope work is meditative labor that helps pass the long hours in the tower. Your hands know the work intimately, leaving your mind free to wander or to focus on the rhythms of prayer and contemplation that structure your days. As you work, you are aware of the gradual changes in light and temperature that mark the passage of afternoon toward evening. The sun slants lower through your window, casting longer shadows across the stone floor. The warmth that built up during the midday hours begins to dissipate as the stone releases its stored heat. You can observe the changing patterns of activity in the city as well. The intense work of midday gives way to the steadier pace of afternoon. People move more slowly, conserving energy for the remaining hours of daylight. Children who played energetically in the morning now rest in shaded spots or help with family tasks. The shadows of buildings grow longer, creating patches of cool shade in streets that were blazing with sunlight just hours before. The light itself takes on a different quality, softer and more golden as it filters through the increasing thickness of atmosphere. These subtle changes are like a language you have learned to read during your years in the tower. The position of shadows tells you the time as accurately as any sundial. The color of light reveals the weather to come. The behavior of birds and the direction of wind currents all provide information about the world beyond your stone walls. You finish adjusting the guy rope and test its tension by plucking it like a harp string. The rope produces a low, musical note that fades quickly in the stone chamber. The proper tension will help absorb the vibrations of bell ringing and protect the wooden frame from excessive stress. Satisfied with your work, you set the rope aside and return to your vigil at the window. The afternoon continues its slow progression toward evening. Time moves differently in the tower, measured not in minutes but in the gradual shifts of light and shadow, in the changing sounds from the city below, in the internal rhythms of prayer and contemplation. You watch a group of children playing in a courtyard visible from your window. Their game involves running and tagging, simple play that requires nothing but energy and imagination. Their laughter carries up to your tower on the afternoon breeze, a sound that brings warmth to your solitary existence. The children's play reminds you of your own childhood, years ago in a village far from Prague. You too once ran and played without concern for bells or prayers or the passage of hours. But that life belongs to the past now. Your present existence is defined by the tower, by the bells, by the sacred rhythms that govern your days. As the afternoon progresses, you prepare for the next appointed hour. None, the 9th hour after sunrise, is still some time away, but you use the interval to perform additional maintenance tasks. You descend partway down the tower to inspect the rope passages where the bell ropes pass through the wooden floors. These passages must be kept clear and smooth to prevent the ropes from binding or fraying. You examine each passage carefully, feeling for rough spots or splinters that could damage the hemp fibers. Where necessary, you sand the wood smooth with a piece of rough stone, working patiently until the surface is properly finished. This work requires you to lie on the wooden floor and reach into the passages with your tools. The position is uncomfortable, but the task is important. A rope that binds at the wrong moment could prevent a bell from ringing properly, disrupting the prayers and announcements that depend on your faithful service. You oil the wooden surfaces lightly, using the same rendered fat that you apply to the bell mechanisms. The oil penetrates the wood and helps preserve it against the constant friction of rope movement. It also makes the passages slicker, allowing the ropes to move more freely. Having completed this inspection, you climb back to your watching chamber. The sun has moved noticeably lower during your absence, and the quality of light in your chamber has changed accordingly. The direct rays no longer penetrate as deeply through your window, but the light remains bright and warm. You settle back onto your stool and resume your patient vigil. Waiting is perhaps the most challenging aspect of your work in the tower. The hours between bell ringings can seem to stretch endlessly, especially during the long winter days when darkness comes early and the cold makes every task more difficult. But you have learned to find peace in the waiting, to use the quiet hours for prayer and contemplation. The silence of the tower becomes a companion rather than an enemy. The solitude provides space for thoughts and reflections that would be impossible in the busy world below. You take up a piece of personal work now, a small carving you have been working on during your spare time. It is a figure of a saint, carved from a piece of oak left over from bell frame repairs. The work is delicate, requiring careful attention to proportion and detail. You work with a small, sharp knife, removing tiny shavings of wood with each cut. The figure is beginning to take shape under your hands, the rough block gradually revealing the form hidden within. The work is slow but satisfying, a creative outlet that balances the mechanical repetition of your daily duties. Carving requires good light, and you position yourself to take advantage of the afternoon sun streaming through your window. The warm light reveals the grain of the wood and helps you see the subtle details that make the difference between crude work and true craftsmanship. As you carve, you think about the saint the figure represents. Saint Peter, the keeper of keys, the guardian of entrances and thresholds. There is something fitting about carving his image here in the tower, where you serve as keeper of the bells that mark the entrances to prayer and worship. Each cut of the knife is deliberate and considered. Wood removed cannot be replaced, so every decision must be carefully thought through. The work demands patience and skill, qualities that your years in the tower have helped you develop. The afternoon light continues to change as you work. The sun moves lower in the western sky, and the shadows in your chamber grow longer and deeper. The stone walls, which absorbed heat during the midday hours, begin to release that warmth back into the cooling air. You pause in your carving to check the time by the position of shadows on your floor. The pattern of light and dark tells you that none approaches, the 9th hour after sunrise. You set aside your carving and prepare for another journey to the bell chamber. The stairs seem steeper each time you climb them, though you know this is more a matter of accumulated fatigue than any actual change in the stone steps. Your legs carry you upward with the automatic rhythm of long practice, each foot finding its proper place without conscious thought. In the bell chamber, you move to the rope of the nun bell, another of the smaller bells with its own distinctive voice. This bell calls the faithful to the afternoon prayer, marking the progression of day toward evening. The nun bell has a bright, clear tone that cuts through the ambient sounds of the city. You grasp the familiar rope and feel the weight of the bronze bell above. With a steady pull, you set the bell in motion, timing the movement carefully to produce the precise rhythm required for this prayer hour. The bell responds to your touch, tilting on its wheel until bronze strikes iron and the clear voice of the nun bell rings out across Prague. You count the strikes carefully, ringing the bell 9 times to mark the 9th hour. Each strike is precisely timed, the intervals between them measured and consistent. The sound fills the bell chamber and spills out through the arched openings, carrying across the rooftops and streets of the city below. People pause in their afternoon work to listen, some offering brief prayers, others simply noting the passage of time marked by your faithful service. When the ninth strike fades into silence, you release the rope and let the bell settle into stillness. The echo continues for several heartbeats, a reminder of the power contained in these bronze voices that speak on your behalf to the entire city. You use this opportunity in the bell chamber to perform a more thorough inspection of the great bell, the largest and most important of your charges. This bell, used for the most solemn occasions and the most significant prayers, requires special attention and care. The great bell hangs motionless in its frame, a massive bronze presence that dominates the bell chamber. Its surface bears the marks of its casting, including inscriptions in Latin that identify its maker and dedication. You run your hands over these inscriptions, feeling the raised letters under your fingertips. The wooden wheel that controls the great bell is correspondingly massive, carved from a single piece of oak and reinforced with iron bands. You examine these bands carefully, looking for signs of loosening or corrosion. The iron must be kept clean and properly maintained to prevent rust from weakening the crucial connections. The counterweight that balances the great bell hangs on a heavy chain, each link hand forged and carefully tested. You examine this chain link by link, looking for signs of stress or wear. The failure of even a single link could be catastrophic, potentially causing the great bell to fall and destroy itself in the tower. Satisfied with the condition of the great bell and its associated mechanisms, you turn your attention to cleaning and maintenance. You apply oil to all the moving parts, working the thick grease into the wood and metal with your fingers. The oil will protect against moisture and reduce friction during operation. You clean the bell itself with a soft cloth, removing dust and any other accumulation from its bronze surface. The metal gleams in the afternoon light filtering through the bell chamber openings. This bell represents years of skilled labor by master craftsmen, and it deserves to be treated with appropriate respect. Having completed your inspection and maintenance, you descend once again to your watching chamber. The sun has moved lower during your time in the bell chamber, and the light in your chamber has taken on the golden quality that comes in the later afternoon. You return to your stool by the window and resume your carving work. The changing light requires you to adjust your position slightly to maintain good visibility of the fine details in the wood. The figure of Saint Peter continues to emerge from the oak block under your patient knife work. You work on the saint's hands, carved in the gesture of holding keys. The keys themselves are tiny, requiring the most delicate cuts to achieve the proper proportions. One slip of the knife could ruin hours of careful work, so you proceed with extreme caution. The afternoon continues its slow progression toward evening. From your window, you can observe the gradual changes in the city below as people begin to think about the approaching end of the workday. Shadows grow longer, reaching across streets and courtyards like dark fingers. The light takes on an increasingly golden cast as the sun sinks lower in the western sky. This light is beautiful but brief, lasting only for the hour or two before sunset. You try to take advantage of it for your detailed carving work while it remains strong enough to see clearly. As you carve, you listen to the sounds rising from the city. The character of these sounds changes throughout the day, and now you can detect the subtle shift that indicates the approach of evening. Voices carry differently in the cooling air. The sounds of work become less urgent, more relaxed. Children's voices take on a different quality as well, less energetic than in the morning. touched with the fatigue that comes at the end of a long day of play. You can hear mothers calling their children home for evening meals, voices that carry clearly in the still air of approaching dusk. The sounds drift up to your tower window like smoke, becoming part of the ambient texture of city life that surrounds your solitary existence. You continue your delicate carving work, adding tiny details to the keys in St. Peter's hands. Each cut must be precise, removing just the right amount of wood to suggest the metal implements without making them too fragile to survive handling. The work requires complete concentration, leaving no room for worry or restless thoughts. The light continues to fade gradually, forcing you to hold your carving closer to the window to see the fine details clearly. The golden afternoon light gives way to the softer, more diffused illumination of early evening. Soon you will need to rely on candlelight for any detailed work. You pause in your carving to rest your eyes and hands. The small muscles in your fingers ache slightly from the precise movements required for the delicate knife work. You flex your hands and stretch your arms above your head, working out the stiffness that comes from maintaining the same position for extended periods. From your window, you can see the first hints of smoke rising from evening cooking fires throughout the city. Families are beginning to prepare their supper meals, simple fare but nourishing enough to sustain them through the night and into another day of labor. The smoke creates thin gray lines against the darkening sky, each one marking a household, a family, a small collection of lives intersecting briefly around a shared hearth. You set aside your carving and take up another maintenance task. One of the candle holders in your chamber has accumulated a thick layer of wax drippings that need to be scraped away. The wax has hardened into irregular shapes, some of it extending down the stone wall below the holder. You work at the wax with your knife, carefully removing the accumulated drippings without damaging the wooden holder underneath. The old wax comes away in small flakes and chunks, some of it still containing fragments of wick from previous candles. You collect these wax fragments in a small clay pot, saving them to be melted down and used again when you make new candles. Nothing is wasted in the tower. Every scrap of wax, every piece of rope too short for bell work, every bit of food that might spoil, all find some use or are carefully preserved for future need. This economy of resources comes naturally after years of solitary living, where waste means hardship and careful preservation means survival. The candle holder, once cleaned, reveals the grain of the wood underneath. It is oak, like most of the wooden fixtures in the tower, chosen for its strength and durability. The wood has darkened with age and smoke, developing a rich patina that speaks of years of faithful service. You test the holder by inserting a new candle and checking that it sits firmly without wobbling. The fit is snug, holding the candle upright and stable. Soon you will need to light this candle, as the natural light fades and the work of evening begins. The sun sinks lower in the western sky, visible now through the narrow window slits that face in that direction. The light takes on the deeper golden color that comes just before sunset, warm and rich but beginning to fade. This is one of the most beautiful times of day in the tower, when the stone walls seem to glow with captured sunlight. You move to the western window to watch the sunset unfold. From this height, you can see across the city to the hills beyond, where the sun will disappear in perhaps an hour's time. The sky begins to show the first suggestions of color, pale orange and pink starting to appear among the gray and blue of daytime clouds. Below you, the city settles into its evening rhythms. The intense activity of midday has given way to the slower pace of approaching night. People move more deliberately, conserving their energy for the essential tasks that remain before darkness falls completely. You can see lights beginning to appear in windows throughout the city, Small flickering points that mark where families have lit their evening candles or stirred up their hearth fires. These lights create a constellation of human activity, each one representing lives and stories that unfold far below your tower perch. The approaching evening brings with it the time for Vespers, the evening prayer that marks the transition from day to night. You prepare yourself for another ascent to the bell chamber, though your legs feel the accumulated fatigue of a full day's climbing. The stone steps seem steeper now, harder on your knees and ankles. In the bell chamber, the western light slants through the arched openings, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. The bells hang silent in their frames, waiting for your touch to give them voice. The Vespers bell, one of the smaller bells, will call the faithful to the evening prayer that closes the day's worship. You move to the appropriate rope, feeling the familiar texture of hemp beneath your palms. The rope shows wear in the places where your hands grip it most frequently, polished smooth by countless repetitions of this same motion. You wrap your fingers around the rope and prepare to pull. The Vespers bell responds to your touch, tilting on its wooden wheel until bronze meets iron with a clear, musical strike. The sound fills the bell chamber and flows out through the openings, carrying across the darkening city the call to evening prayer. You ring the bell 7 times, the traditional number for Vespers, each strike precisely timed and evenly spaced. The sound of the Vespers bell has a different quality in the evening air, seeming to carry farther and linger longer than the daytime bells. Perhaps it is the stillness of approaching night, or the way sound travels in the cooling atmosphere, but the evening bells always seem more resonant, more profound. When the 7th strike fades into silence, you hold the rope steady and listen to the echo as it bounces off the stone buildings below and returns to the tower in diminished whispers. The silence that follows is deeper than the silence between daytime bells, touched with the peace that comes at the end of day's labors. You remain in the bell chamber for a few minutes, checking once more on the condition of your equipment. The constant ringing throughout the day puts stress on all the mechanisms, and a problem discovered now is easier to address than one discovered in the darkness before dawn tomorrow. The wooden wheels appear sound, their oak construction still strong after years of service. The iron pins and axles show no signs of excessive wear. The rope passages are clear and smooth. Everything is in order for another day's service, another cycle of prayers and announcements. You oil the Vespers bell mechanism with careful attention, working the thick grease into all the moving parts. The oil will protect the wood and metal through the night, preventing moisture from causing rust or rot. This daily maintenance is what keeps the bells ringing true year after year. Satisfied with your inspection, you begin the descent to your watching chamber. The stairs are familiar beneath your feet, each stone step worn smooth by generations of bell keepers who have climbed this same path. Your own feet have traced these steps thousands of times, until the motion has become as natural as breathing. Back in your chamber, you light a candle to supplement the fading daylight. The flame catches quickly, pushing back against the gathering darkness and creating a small circle of warm light around your stool. The candlelight flickers against the stone walls, casting dancing shadows that seem alive in the confined space. You return to your western window to watch the final stages of sunset. The sun hangs low above the hills now, a bright disk that paints the sky around it in shades of orange and pink. The light reflects off the river that winds through Prague, turning the water into a ribbon of molten copper. This is the most peaceful time of day in the tower. The morning's cold and urgency have passed. The midday heat and activity have subsided. Evening brings a sense of completion, of tasks accomplished and duties fulfilled. The day's work is nearly done, and night offers the promise of rest. You prepare your evening meal while watching the sunset progress. Your food is simple but adequate. A piece of bread saved from morning, a handful of dried peas soaked until soft, a small portion of salted pork that adds flavor and substance to the meal. You eat slowly, savoring each bite while the light outside fades gradually to darkness. The bread is coarse, made from rye and barley flour, dense and filling. It tastes of grain and earth, honest flavors that speak of fields and harvest, of the cycles of planting and reaping that sustain human life. You eat it with gratitude, aware that this simple food represents the labor of many hands, farmers and millers, bakers and merchants. The dried peas are bland but nourishing, providing the steady energy that carries you through long days of physical labor. You have learned to appreciate their subtle flavor, the way they absorb the taste of whatever herbs or salt you might add to them. Simple food teaches you to find satisfaction in basic sustenance rather than elaborate flavors. The salted pork is a luxury, saved for evening meals when its rich taste provides the most satisfaction. The salt has preserved the meat through weeks of storage, concentrating its flavor until a small piece provides both taste and nourishment. You eat it slowly, making the small portion last as long as possible. As you eat, you watch the last light fade from the western sky. The sun disappears behind the hills, leaving behind bands of color that gradually darken from orange to red to deep purple. Stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, faint at first but growing brighter as night deepens. The city below settles into evening quiet. Most people have finished their day's work and gathered around their hearths for supper and conversation. Lights flicker in windows throughout Prague, creating a scattered pattern of illumination that mirrors the stars appearing overhead. You finish your meal and clean your simple dishes with water from your daily bucket. The water is cold now, having lost the warmth it might have held from the afternoon sun. You work quickly, wanting to complete this task before your hands become too cold to grip the rough pottery effectively. The evening air grows noticeably cooler as the sun's warmth dissipates into the darkening sky. You pull your woolen cloak closer around your shoulders, grateful for its warmth against the chill that rises from the stone walls around you. The tower, which absorbed heat during the day, begins to release that warmth back into the cooling air. You return to your carving by candlelight, though the work is more difficult now with only the flickering flame to illuminate the fine details. You must hold the wooden figure close to the candle, turning it frequently to catch the light on different surfaces. The warm glow reveals the grain of the oak and the emerging features of St. Peter's face. Working by candlelight requires patience and extreme care. The shifting flame creates constantly changing shadows that can deceive the eye about depth and proportion. You must move slowly, making each cut with deliberate precision to avoid mistakes that cannot be corrected. The figure is nearly complete now, after many evenings of careful work. St. Peter's robes fall in realistic folds. His face shows the dignity appropriate to his station, and his hands hold the symbolic keys with convincing authority. This small sculpture represents hours of patient labor, a creative outlet that provides balance to the repetitive nature of your daily duties. You pause frequently to rest your eyes and stretch your fingers. Close work by candlelight is tiring, and the small flame produces less light than you would prefer. But these evening hours are the only time available for personal projects, so you make the best of the conditions available. Outside your window, full darkness has arrived. The sky is now black except for the scattered points of starlight and the thin crescent of a moon that hangs low above the horizon. The air is still and cold, carrying the crisp scent that comes with clear winter nights. The sounds from the city below have diminished to occasional voices and the distant barking of dogs. Most people have retreated indoors for the night, leaving the streets to the watchguards and the few travelers who must move in darkness. The tower feels even more isolated now, suspended between earth and sky in its pool of candlelight. You set aside your carving and prepare for the final bell of the day. Compline, the last prayer, will be rung when full darkness has settled over the city. This bell marks the end of the day's prayers and the beginning of the great silence that will last until dawn brings the first bell of a new day. You check your candle to ensure it has enough wax remaining to last through the evening tasks. The flame burns steadily, consuming the tallow at a predictable rate. You have learned to judge time by the burning of candles, another way of measuring the passage of hours when no other timepiece is available. The stone walls around you radiate cold now that the sun's warmth has dissipated completely. You move closer to your small brazier, where the coals still hold some heat from the fire you built earlier in the day. The warmth feels good on your hands and face, though it does little to heat the entire chamber. You add a few small pieces of charcoal to the brazier, blowing gently on the coals until they catch and glow more brightly. The additional fuel will provide warmth for another hour or two, enough to carry you through the final tasks of the day. You must be careful not to use too much fuel, as your supply must last until the next delivery. The time for Compline approaches. You gather your resolve for one final climb to the bell chamber, knowing that your legs will feel every step after a full day of ascending and descending the narrow stone stairs. The climb is always hardest at night, when fatigue has accumulated and the cold makes every movement more difficult. You light a second candle to carry with you, shielding the flame with your hand as you begin the ascent. The stairs are treacherous in the darkness, and the flickering candlelight creates confusing shadows that can mislead your feet. You climb slowly, placing each foot carefully before shifting your weight. The bell chamber is cold and dark, lit only by your single candle and the faint starlight filtering through the arched openings. The bells hang like silent sentinels in the darkness, their bronze surfaces catching occasional glints of candlelight. The space feels vast and mysterious in the limited illumination. You move to the rope for the Compline bell, another of the smaller bells with a voice suited to the quiet solemnity of night prayer. The rope feels cold under your hands, stiff with the chill air. You wrap your fingers around the hemp fibers and prepare to ring the final bell of the day. The Compline bell responds to your pull, tilting on its wheel and striking with a clear, pure tone that cuts through the night silence. The sound seems louder in the darkness, more significant somehow, as if the absence of other sounds gives it greater power and meaning. You ring the bell 7 times, the traditional number for Compline, each strike measured and deliberate. The sound flows out through the bell chamber openings and across the sleeping city, calling the few who remain awake to the final prayer of the day. Most people will hear this bell from their beds, a reminder of the sacred rhythms that govern their lives even in sleep. When the 7th strike fades into the night silence, you hold the rope steady and listen to the echo as it bounces off the stone buildings below. The silence that follows is profound, touched with the deep peace that comes at the end of day's labors. This is the great silence, the pause between one day and the next. You remain in the bell chamber for a final inspection of your equipment. By candlelight, you check each rope and mechanism, ensuring that everything is prepared for tomorrow's service. The wood and metal show no signs of problems, and the ropes hang properly without kinks or tangles. You oil the Compline bell mechanism with special care, working the grease into the wooden wheel and iron axle. This bell will be the first to ring tomorrow at dawn, so it must be in perfect working order. The oil will protect the moving parts through the cold night hours and ensure smooth operation when morning comes. Satisfied with your inspection, you begin the careful descent to your chamber. The candle flame gutters in the draught, and you cup your free hand around it to protect the fragile light. The stairs seem steeper and more numerous in the darkness, each step requiring careful attention to avoid a misstep that could send you tumbling down the stone spiral. Back in your chamber, you set the candle on its holder and settle onto your stool for the final quiet hour before sleep. The day's work is complete. The bells have rung at their appointed times, calling the faithful to prayer and marking the passage of hours for the entire city. Your duty is fulfilled until dawn brings another day of service. You take up your evening prayers, speaking the familiar words quietly in the candlelit silence of your chamber. These prayers are part of your daily routine, as regular as the ringing of bells or the climbing of stairs. They provide structure and meaning to your solitary existence, connecting you to the larger purposes that your work serves. The prayers flow easily from memory, words worn smooth by countless repetitions over the years. You speak them with genuine devotion, finding comfort in their familiar rhythms and ancient wisdom. These words have been spoken by countless believers over centuries, creating a connection that spans time and distance. As you pray, you listen to the night sounds that filter through your window. The wind whistles softly through the narrow openings in the tower walls. Occasionally, you hear the distant sound of footsteps on cobblestone as someone makes their way through the dark streets below. A dog barks somewhere in the city, answered by another from a different quarter. These sounds create the nighttime symphony of Prague, different from the busy noise of day but no less rich in its own way. The night has its own life, its own rhythms and patterns. You have learned to appreciate this quieter music, finding peace in its gentle variations. You finish your prayers and prepare for sleep. First, you bank the coals in your brazier, covering them with ash to preserve their heat through the night. A few coals that survive until morning will make it easier to start tomorrow's fire, saving precious fuel and effort. You extinguish your candle by pinching the wick between wetted fingers, a technique that preserves the maximum amount of wax for future use. The sudden darkness is complete, broken only by the faint glow from your banked brazier and whatever starlight manages to filter through your narrow windows. You wrap yourself in your woolen blanket, pulling it close around your shoulders and tucking the edges under your body to trap warmth. The wool is rough but effective, holding your body heat and providing insulation against the cold stone walls around you. This blanket has been your companion through many cold nights in the tower. Your simple bed is a straw mattress laid on a wooden platform built into one corner of your chamber. The straw has been compressed by months of use, but it still provides some cushioning against the hard wood underneath. You settle onto the mattress and arrange your blanket for maximum warmth. The stone walls around you radiate cold, but you have grown accustomed to sleeping in these conditions. Your body generates enough heat under the woolen blanket to create a small pocket of warmth, and you have learned to curl up in positions that conserve that heat most effectively. You lie quietly in the darkness, listening to the night sounds and feeling the profound stillness that settles over the tower after the last bell has rung. Your muscles ache pleasantly from the day's physical labor. Your mind feels clear and peaceful, cleansed by the simple routines and repetitive tasks that have filled the hours from dawn to darkness. The rhythms of your work create a kind of meditation, a state of mind where thoughts flow freely without becoming tangled in worry or anxiety. The physical demands of bell keeping, the constant climbing and rope work and maintenance tasks, provide an outlet for nervous energy and leave you genuinely tired at day's end. You think briefly about tomorrow, about the familiar routine that will begin again before dawn. The same stairs to climb, the same ropes to pull, the same bells to ring at their appointed hours. There is comfort in this predictability, in knowing exactly what each day will bring and how each task should be performed. But tonight, those responsibilities belong to tomorrow. Now there is only the warm cocoon of your woolen blanket, the solid presence of stone walls around you, and the deep silence that follows the last bell of the day. Your breathing slows and deepens as sleep approaches, your body finally releasing the accumulated tension of another day's faithful service. The tower settles into its own nighttime quiet. The massive stone walls contract slightly as they cool, occasionally producing small creaking sounds that you have learned to recognize and find comforting rather than alarming. These are the natural sounds of old stone and seasoned timber, the building adjusting to the temperature changes that come with night. Far below, the city of Prague sleeps under its blanket of darkness. Families gather around dying hearth fires, sharing warmth and quiet conversation before retiring to their beds. Guards walk their beats through empty streets, maintaining watch over the sleeping community. The river flows past the city walls, its water dark and silent under the stars. You are suspended between earth and sky in your tower chamber, keeper of the bronze voices that mark time for all who live within hearing of their sound. Tomorrow will bring another day of faithful service, another cycle of prayers and announcements, another opportunity to serve the community through your solitary labor. But now sleep comes, gentle and complete, carrying you into the deep rest that follows honest work well done. The bells hang silent in their chamber above, waiting for dawn to give them voice again. The tower stands solid and strong around you, shelter and sanctuary, workplace and home. In the darkness and silence, time moves differently. Hours pass unmarked by bell or candle, measured only by the slow rotation of stars across the narrow windows and the gradual deepening of cold in the stone walls. The great silence holds until dawn breaks the eastern sky and calls you to another day of keeping time for a sleeping city. The rhythm continues, as it has for years before your arrival and as it will for years after your departure. The bells will ring, the prayers will be marked, the hours will be announced to the faithful below. And somewhere high above the rooftops of Prague, in a chamber carved from ancient stone, a keeper of bells will wake before dawn to begin again the sacred work of marking time.